What's up, League fans, and welcome to a very special episode of The Blame Game. This week there's a major CSGO tournament going on, and Team Liquid for some reason puts a priority on that over my show, so I'm left with the scraps to record with. So if something seems out of place, you probably know why now. This week, since there were no games, I'm going to focus on a series that's very near and dear to my heart in Team Liquid vs NRG. I'm still going to focus the show on clearing up popular misconceptions or controversies, but there won't be me directly replying to any Reddit comments, just things I tend to see on them. To kick things off, I want to talk about the mid lane. Whenever people start discussing Phoenix's skill, he kind of divides the community, with people either calling him overrated or one of the best mids in NA. Now, having worked with him for a couple years while staying totally unbiased, I tend to agree with the latter. But what matters here is how he matches up against GBM. Let's start with some stats, and let's keep in mind the team styles because those often provide important context to the stats. We'll be looking at KDA first, which overall is a pretty bleh stat when describing a player because it's so team dependent, but we'll just have to try and keep that stuff in mind. For example, Phoenix is 2nd in KDA but on the 4th place team, while GBM is 7th in KDA but on the 5th place team. If you look at team kill death ratio, however, Team Liquid is the 2nd place team and NRG is the 5th place team. Additionally, GBM has fewer kills and assists while also having a higher kill participation. If you look at the damage per minute numbers, they're only 10 points away from each other and taking the 2nd and 3rd spots respectively. If you're struggling to follow what my point is in all this, well, shit, me too. I think all these stats are ambiguous enough that it's fair to call it a wash between the two of them. Having said that, there is one clear advantage in favor of Phoenix, and it's that GBM is a massive resource hog. Now, their team goal percent numbers are pretty similar, so you have to look a little bit more behind the curtain to see what I'm talking about. I went back and looked at every game these teams played this split and counted the number of ganks each of them received. Phoenix only pulled 8 ganks the whole season, where GBM took 21. In the games that they played against each other, Phoenix only had 3 to GBM 7. These ganks weren't really high impact either, as they didn't influence the game. There was a single 1-for-1, and then the rest of them Phoenix was ahead or even in CS. Another factor is that GBM is a major focal point of NRG's drafting style. Both of them have played 12 champions this split, but Phoenix has over half of his games on Corki, Lulu, and Lux, with many of those picks coming early in the draft. GBM has a heavy emphasis on counterpicking and being able to get into favorable lane matchups for himself. The final nail in the coffin is that Phoenix is 1st amongst all mids in the world at CS per minute and 2nd in NA for CS differential at 10, where GBM is 9th and 7th in those respectively for NA. Phoenix is able to massively outfarm GBM despite receiving less priority in the draft and from his jungler. It feels like NRG want GBM to be this massive Korean superstar carry, but they're really just getting a pretty average performance out of him. Whether or not that's all GBM's fault though is up in the air. Moving on to other topics quickly, I want to touch on the mismatch in top lane between Impact and Lorlo. Now, it's obvious that Impact is the better player, but with how both teams are utilizing their top laners this season, as well as Impact having his own disappointing performance, it's not going to be as significant of a gap as you'd think. It's true that they're both bottom of the standings basically in CS differential at 10 and CS per minute, with Lorlo also being a whopping 5 points behind Impact in CS differential at 10. It means that while they get about the same amount of CS on average, opponents will have a field day when playing against Lorlo in terms of getting their farm. I don't think this is something that's a big deal though for 2 reasons. First off, both Lorlo and Impact are primarily playing tanks this season, with Lorlo having 16 out of his 18 games on them and Impact having 13 of his 16. Do you guys remember all those epic wet noodle fights that clinched out the game for their teams? Well, me neither, because that doesn't happen. Secondly, Lorlo is the league leader amongst top laners for assists, and he has that because he has a very well-defined playstyle on his team as the primary tank player. He just needs to not feed his ass off in the early game and stay relevant enough to be able to tank up in team fights. The last thing I'll mention for why I think Team Liquid will take this series is their strength of wins. Team Liquid is 1-1 against all playoff opponents aside for Immortals, and a lot of those wins came in the second half of the season. Team Liquid is a team that never struggles to find openings and make their own plays, but they lack a little bit of discernment to know which of those plays are good ones to take. It makes Team Liquid a very scary team to play because a lot of their losses come down to did they bite off more than they can chew. NRG, on the other hand, has only won against 2 other playoff teams, with those being TSM and TL. The win against TL also felt a little bit more like an aberration than something that's going to happen consistently over a series. Moon and GBM had 2 of their best games of the season, and they got a draft that abused Lorlo's champ pool hard. Despite these things going right, TL was still in a position to win this game after winning 2 team fights before they looked to Dignitas for inspiration on shot calling around Baron. With all that said, there's still ways for NRG to take this series. First off, they need to find something to do with Impact other than stick him in tank versus tank matchups because there's just not enough room with those picks to abuse Lorlo. It's the one positional skill mismatch they really have, and so they need to find a way to exploit that. We know Impact can hard carry games because we saw him do it once with Fiora versus Renegades. They need to find more opportunities like this. Another avenue of success would be if GBM can step up and play the carry role that NRG seems to think he's capable of. We've all seen GBM carry some games this season, but he'll need to string together at least 3 good performances on game day versus a staunch opponent in Phoenix. Lastly, TL's drafts are solid though a little binary, and we've seen NRG is capable of outdrafting them. If they spent the extra week cooking up something special, or they're just going to find some ways to abuse TL's priority picks, then there's a chance that NRG can start the game with a draft advantage every time. Some combination of those 3 things will need to go right, as well as having their bot lane and jungle hold their own against Team Liquid's more skilled counterparts in order for NRG to take this series. I'll wrap all this up with a prediction that Team Liquid takes this series 3-1. I glossed over some other important points such as their advantages with Piglet and Dardoch in order to focus on less obvious topics. I'm super excited for the games, so you can expect regular Blame games following the series. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to hit on multiple topics or just stick with one series the whole way through. I'll catch you guys next week.
Please press the subscribe button. It only takes a second, and then you'll get all that Team Liquid content that you don't care about because you're here for League of Legends, and the channel has a lot of other stuff too. But maybe check it out.